Our next speaker is Karen Armstrong. Karen is the wife of Queen Woodson. And did I say anything wrong? That's how it was in the
Woodson.
It's Woodson, not Armstrong.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what, in the email it says Armstrong. No? God, I'm so sorry. Anyway, it's Karen Woodson. I'm so sorry. She'll be presenting her number 7 speech. The title of the speech is The Home of Our First President. Karen's favorite country is Canada, and most exotic food that she's eaten is sushi. Her favorite foreign movie is The Counterfeiters. It is set during French reign and shows how special interest groups were using criminals to counterfeit money from various countries. So let's welcome Karen Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, one of the most interesting things I have ever done was tour the Mount Vernon estate. Never had I been as interested in a tourist site as I was with this place. I had always been interested in our first president, so when given the chance to visit Mount Vernon, I jumped at the chance. That visit and additional research helped me gather this information. Mount Vernon was the home of George and Martha Washington from the time of their marriage in 1759 until General Washington's death in 1799. He worked tirelessly to expand his plantation from only 2,000 acres to 8,000. And the mansion house, which started at 6 rooms, was expanded to 21. I was just truly amazed at this place. It was surreal walking on the grounds that our first president walked on. First official president, as some like to argue. The centerpiece of this visit was his actual home. It was built in the 18th century and it was filled with 18th century treasure, although not all treasures actually belonged to Washington. Only 45 of the acres are open to the public. Washington himself designed the landscape, which includes 13 trees still standing as the last living witnesses to Washington's life. The design he used followed the purism of European landscaping design. Unfortunately, the horse-drawn vehicles, sleighs, and coaches that George Washington owned are not in existence today, but there were actual representations of vehicles that were used during his time. I learned also that the separately housed kitchen was very busy. At least 3 generous meals were made a day. Breakfast was served promptly at 7, dinner at 3, and tea at 6. Sometimes a light supper was served at 9 p.m. We also viewed the smokehouse. George Washington was once quoted as saying, "Virginia ladies pride themselves in the goodness of their hams." Therefore, Washington carefully supervised the preparation of hams and bacon that were eaten by the Washingtons and their guests. Indeed, all of the food produced at Mount Vernon, Martha was especially proud of her hams. In the wash house and laundry yard, 2 slaves, Bina and Dulcie, worked 6 days a week, washing laundry for Washingtons, their guests, and the floor managers. They washed, dried, and ironed shirts, sheets, towels, and other linens. They used lye and animal fat, doesn't sound too cleansing to me, to wash the clothes. And when the weather did not cooperate, the laundry was dried indoors on wooden drying racks called clothes horses. There was also a separate building that housed the servants, and at the time of Washington's death, he used it to store his military and important papers. There was also a salt house. This was used for drying shad and herring that they caught on the Potomac River. The fish were preserved by salting and putting into barrels that were either sold or used on the plantation. An average of 1 million fish were caught in 6 weeks. One vital aspect to the self-sufficient status that George Washington insisted on was that he selectively bred his sheep to produce higher quality wool. They also grew flax and hemp to make linen and rope. The spinning room, which we viewed, was used to store raw fibers and also for the slaves to spin the material into thread that could then be weaved into material. This clothing was used for the slaves mostly because the Washingtons used their fabric that was imported from England. The overseer of the property had his own quarters. They were required to submit weekly reports to the farm manager. The overseers made an annual wage of only $133 plus board, bed, lodging, and washing. In addition to other skills, Washington also experimented with the crops and plants. Walking through the greenhouse was very amazing. The greenhouse gave shelter to the exotic plants that was not typical of Virginia. In the summer, the plants were moved outside, but in the winter, there was a stove inside the greenhouse that was constantly lit to stay warm. And the slave that kept it stayed in what was called the stove room. Flanking the sides of the greenhouse were the slaves' quarters. Also on the grounds was the shoemaker shop. This was one of the most important aspects of the plantation. Washington knew that the slaves needed adequate shoes for the hard work that they would do, and it would also keep their feet warm during the winter. Each slave was only given one pair of shoes, so the shoemaker's job was to keep the shoes up and running. The shoemaker would also repair saddles and other leather items. Though most of Mount Vernon was self-sufficient, some items still needed to be ordered from cities in England and America. These items were kept locked up. The storehouse housed these items, and there was a clerk on site at all times that maintained the accounts and the inventory. I do hope this information has been of interest to you. If you're ever in the Washington, D.C. area, I recommend the tour of the grounds and the buildings of Mount Vernon. It was a very interesting tour, and if I ever give them the chance to go back, I would. Madam Postmaster.